And this is Dr. Chuck Betters with MARKINC Ministries, and you are on day 4 of the 12 days of Christmas. What we're trying to do in this series is answer the question of why we do what we do. So Sharon, that's my question to you. Why do we do at MARKINC Ministries what we do?
Well, as I've said every day, we ask ourselves that question a lot, and God always comes through, because we ask that question sometimes when we're discouraged and we're wondering, we're doing all this, is anybody listening? And then he sends us a personal note, and truly it's all about self-pity. But God has given us a calling, and we have to go with that calling. And one of the incredible things that he has done is opened up the whole wide world through technology, as he's done for many ministries. But Chuck started Ask Dr. Betters a few years ago. And at first it was kind of slow. He answers questions about suffering, and he takes 5 to 8 minutes. And I know those of you who know him are thinking, really? Only 5 to 8 minutes? And he answers some of the hardest questions about suffering that people send in from all over the world. And friends, we've had over 1 million people view these little videos, and it's growing. It grows every day by people who are really hungry for help and hope. And they have some of the hardest questions that I would never be able to answer, but the scriptures have the answer. And thankfully, God has given Chuck the wisdom to look at the word and to give those answers. And I'll never forget one note we received. And there are so many. We don't have time to share them with you. So it's just so many messages from people who are hurting and have questions and need the help and hope of the gospel. And this gentleman wrote, and he said, thank you for talking about your son, Mark. I never thought it would happen to me, but my son was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he was caught in the crossfire of a gang fight, and he was killed. And he was 16 or 17 years old. And he's not from America. He's not from the United States. I mean, these are people from all over the world who are reaching out. And he said, someday I would like to do for my son what you've done for yours with the ministry. I'd like to somehow help other people so that my son's death is not in vain. And this is just one person, which of course we responded to with the gospel, with how MARKINC got started and all that. But there's so much more to that broken heart, because we know it's not just about the dad. It's about the mom and the siblings and the family and the heartache that this one person is experiencing. And it is such an honor to be there, even though our hearts bleed, because we remember what it was like in those early days and how awful it was. And yet we desperately needed those people who came back to be with us. And so thank God for Ask Dr. Betters and for the way he is using it to shine a light into the darkness. And it is dark. Some of the questions you get it's just so dark. But the light of Christ cannot be put out by the darkness. And that is why we do what we do.
You know, it's interesting that the design of Ask Dr. Betters, and Sharon, we're actually approaching 2 million now.
Oh, wow. 2
million viewers.
But who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting? We get these questions from all over the world, and they break your heart. Because I'm thinking I've got 5 to 8 minutes, because the design of Ask Dr. Betters is we try to allow our listeners to think that they are sitting in a chair, and I'm sitting behind a desk, and I'm hearing their question for the very first time, like a counseling session. And that is actually what we do. I don't see the questions or get the questions until they're actually asked with the cameras rolling, because we want to try to relate their pain to the scriptures. And so my job, my task, is to hold a little mini counseling session with them. And from that has been birthed Anchored Hope. We'll tell you more in the days to come about Anchored Hope, our counseling ministry, where we actually virtually counsel people from all over the world. Do you know one of the places where we get the most questions is in the Middle East? people from the Middle East and Muslim countries, many of them from Iran, will send us questions. And many from South America who are living in cultic conditions will write questions that are very, very deep, very, very personal, and very much needing the scriptures to open the light of the world to them, which is Jesus. This is why we do what we do.